Okay.
Yeah, we're live. Let me see what I can do here.
All right.
The magic of live television.
I have no doubt you will come up with a witty and creative solution, sir.
You overestimate me, sir.
As we often say here, there are many ways to skin a cat. Possum or whatever, small mammal of your choice. Besides computer issues, Rich, how are you today?
I'm doing better than I deserve.
I see you've chosen another ensemble from the Rich Brown Spring collection.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with you, my dear friend. I'm going to drop this thing. Here we go into the coined members group, and then if you could grab it from there, Dr. Fuller, and throw it into the regular page, that would be fantastic.
Okay. You're going to put it on the coined members page. All right. Well, I am there. And I am not seeing. I'm seeing like 3 posts of the one post I made, but
yeah, it's the Ralph Brown just posted it.
Okay. Oh, there is a Ralph Brown posting. It's below mine. That's what threw me off.
What's that?
It popped up below the post I made. So I was like, oh, it should be above. All right, let me see. All right, so there's the link. Now, how would you like me to put this in the YouTube?
No, if you don't mind, in the American Warrior Society Facebook.
American Warrior Society Facebook. Not just for coin members. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right.
We got to make this content accessible to everybody, Dr. Fuller.
So true. So very true. Now, let's see. Can I post here?
That's a good question.
Doesn't seem to want to let me. But I will not be denied, sir. Clearly doesn't recognize who it's dealing with.
Yeah, I logged out and logged back in and did all kinds of things, but could not get it.
Yeah, it's not letting me post.
No worries.
I'm too deep in the peasantry. Well, as they say, the spirit is willing, but the computer technology is weak.
I tell you, it is.
See, this is one of the fights that are always coming, right?
The fight of technology is a real thing.
Well, it is. It's become such an ingrained portion of our lives these days. It's supposed to help us out, but when things go sideways, it just gets bad. And I think I've relayed on the show before when I went to Ireland for 2 weeks. When my wife and I got married, we did our honeymoon over there. My eldest daughter, who was an adult at the time, she was legitimately concerned when I told her that I was not taking a cell phone with me, and neither was my wife. And the pearls were clutched, and Dad, that's dangerous. What if I need to get a hold of you? I'm like, well, kid, I'm going to be in Ireland, and you're going to be in the States. So any problems that you have, I can't help. I mean, you're right. You want to be an adult. There you go. Well, how are you going to get around? I held up a paper map.
Right.
This arcane skills.
A buddy of mine gave me all kinds of grief because he saw in my F-150 I had, the old Rand McNally atlas and a couple of paper maps of Tennessee and a couple of the surrounding states. And he started calling Rand McNally, and I'm like, this crap right here can be gone in an instant, just a flutter. And then what are you going to do?
Oh yeah, I actually had that happen one time. I was up in Albany. I was a training agent, so I had a new agent that I was assigned to teach, and I told him, look, one of the first things you got to do is go down and get this one particular type of street atlas that, each page has a very detailed little portion of Albany, and then there's a larger map as well. I says, you got to go get these. He said, I've got my phone. I was like, yeah, okay. But I was, as an example, I was in Vermont for a long time. Cell coverage was crap up there. I imagine it's not much better now just because of the terrain. And he said, you can get out someplace and it just goes away. And not 2 weeks later, we had that big power outage up in New York that, they had people were walking out of Manhattan, and it was a pretty bad deal. And we had to go out and grab some people that day. And I'm the only one with maps.
Yep.
And so like I'm leading the caravan everywhere. And my trainees sitting there going, I'm like, yes, the wisdom of the old guy.
Similar with the Red Cross. We had a disaster. Cell towers were destroyed. No, I mean, this was pre-Starlink, and Lisa's like, hey, is there anything I can do to help? I'm like, yeah, call the chambers of commerce in these communities and see if you can give me some maps of the local area so that I can give to the disaster assistance teams that are flying in that don't know the area, so that they can maneuver and get around. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. When they come in, we got them rental cars and all that kind of stuff, but they had no way to get around. 1, 2, 3, here everybody gets a map. Sectored off.
They can all read the maps, right?
Yeah, you would hope. And not everybody can, which is just mind-boggling to me. And I'm not talking about terrain association and resection.
Intersections and resections.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that, buddy. I'm reading contour intervals, things that an infantryman understands forward and backward. I'm just talking about it's over here and there's a road intersection. I don't know which way do I turn at the intersection.
I remember it was maybe 4th grade. We actually were taught in school map reading, for basics, for reading, what is a legend and, what's going on there with all this information, which I don't believe is done now. Because I pulled out a map and showed my son the other day. And he's like, wow, what strange and ancient knowledge you possess, Father.
I know it's one of those things, obviously. Good morning, Ted. I'm glad you're on. Somebody else is on too. We won't keep you very long this morning. For some reason, Facebook has yet again thrown me off. They may have figured out my workaround. And my do you know what sock puppet is?
I do know what sock puppet is.
Yeah, they may have figured out that in OSINT and some other things, you create sock puppets to do some of the things you need to do. And of course, I had to create a sock puppet to get around Zuckerberg. He may have figured out my little sock puppet with my Proton account.
And you need layers of cutouts.
Yeah, it didn't evidently. It worked for a while, a couple of years. And he may be on to me.
I can't seem to pull up the show on YouTube either. I've got the American Warrior Society icon and a little thing that says awaiting coffee with Rich. I keep resetting it, but it's not showing me the show. So
that's interesting. Let's see.
Maybe it's showing it to you. I can't.
Okay, yeah. When I click on it, TC, it takes you right to it. If you click on that, it should go right there.
It doesn't like me today.
It ain't taking you there?
As much as I believe you could take me there, Rich, it's not taking me there.
Right. Ted says, several times when lost, Bride got a cab and I followed it in a high-speed chase in different EU cities. On the subject of maps, this is running a recruiting substation. This is kind of a leadership thing and a map reading exercise. You may have heard this before because I've mentioned it at least one other time on the show. I had a recruiter, Staff Sergeant Black. Hope you're doing well out there, Ed. I've seen him watch the show before. He's a bank examiner here in Tennessee, and because he got out of the Marine Corps, he says, "Yeah, I used to have these things like every day was broken down in a phase line. So, to make sure the recruiters are hitting their objectives, especially for ones that were maybe behind on mission. I'm like, okay, call me and I can redirect you." And back then we didn't have cell phones. So and again, we still recruited people without cell phones. I mean,
shocking,
right? So he says he missed his call. And when he finally calls in hours late, I'm like, you didn't make your 10 o'clock call. I couldn't find a payphone. Problem solved. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Go ahead and carry on with your day. And tomorrow, any appointments you have, I'll have somebody else take care of them for you. And we're going to do a little exercise. So he comes in, I hand him a map and a big bag of quarters. Have you heard this before?
No, I see where it's going, though.
Oh, yeah. So I'm like, I have a map here at let's call it the COC or the TOC, Tactical Operations Center. You're going to call me from every payphone in Cumberland County. You're going to find them. I'm going to plot them on this map, and we're going to work together. Does that sound okay? So
And
he
we
calls
provide
me
this
and
map to others so that they don't have the unfortunate experience that you had.
bingo. See, we're doing this forever. All the recruiters.
Reconnaissance. This is what this is.
That's exactly right. So as he goes around, I plot it on my map. I write the phone number down, and then I call him back to make sure that's where it is.
Sure.
He goes all around the city, and once we plot 30 or 40 of them, I'm like, that's enough. I think you understand. And there's another Marine on. Good morning, Edward. And he says, so I'm like, I'll pin it up in the wall. So now everybody has access to it and everybody gets a copy of it. And now Black knows it. He can keep it in his car, and the remaining quarters he gets to keep with him, and problem solved.
Brilliant. I think you've addressed a lot of issues right there. I like the callback too, that keeps him from going home, pocketing all your quarters and just calling you every 15 minutes from his home phone. So it's a nice
Me and my brother were talking to somebody, and we're talking about all the scams that they run in prison, and it's like, hey, you got to think like a scumbag if you're going to catch a scumbag. What do you think, Dr. Fuller?
It helps. I mean, there's a very fine line between cops and criminals. If the more successful the cop, the more of a criminal mindset he has, because you've got to climb in their head and crawl around and figure out what they do. And frankly, it's a good lesson to take away, is that they do not think like we do.
Mm-mm.
They've had vastly different life experiences. Their day-to-day life is vastly different than ours, and it wires the brain differently. So, you may think you're being quite friendly and open and respectful, and all they see is weakness and a victim.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I remember an exasperation when I was a brand new officer. I had one of the FTOs I had. I got shuttled around there at first till they got me with this one guy, and I was exasperated because I'm 25, 26 years old, and of course, but I'd been married since I was 18 and 3 deployments and all this stuff. So even though I was a young man, my prefrontal cortex was pretty well developed. And I remember, I'm like, why should I be telling adults what to do? And the FTO, God bless him, gave me a really good maxim, which I believe today. It's the obligation of the responsible to overstate the obvious. And and you are the responsible party here. And okay. Well.
But it's a good lesson in life generally. But for example, you do a lot of firearms instruction, as do I. Things that we take for granted, things that are obvious to us, things that just seem as simple as breathing, are not for other people. It's arcane, bizarre magic in some cases. And we all have our experience levels, and there are things that are bizarre and inobvious to us that are very simple. Take this computer problem. I'm sure if your son Grant was there, he'd type 3 buttons and hit return, and it'd be done. He'd fix it in a heartbeat. You and I'd look at him and go, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's an absolute fact. And the firearms is an interesting one. I had, Dusty Solomon.
Yes. I've never actually met him. We've spoken on the phone a few times.
Yeah. He came up to the farm on Friday and put the new firmware on my Neuro. I guess we can talk about it now. I wish I'd have had it here with me. We could have talked about it, but gave me the new firmware, and we went over some new drills and some other ways you can use the Neuro. And those that don't know, imagine the Neuro, and you can Google this, N-U-R-O, by Building Shooters. It's about yay big, and it is a shot timer with 3 lasers on it. So when you hit the go command, you'll hear an audible, but you'll also get a laser at some point, and then the laser could be red, it could be green, it could be IR, and that's telling you what to do. You can put filters on it to break the laser into a handgun. The handgun could be green, or you can put the filter on the red so that the gun that's projecting, if it's a green gun, you tell the student before the drill, green guns will be officer guns. Red guns will be bad guy guns. So you got multiple arrays on multiple targets. It's a fantastic system. But we were lamenting because he works with police officers all around the United States. I've had the pleasure of doing that the last 10, 15 years. And the takeaway was, what the hell, man? I mean, I may have talked about this. If I did, I won't say the name of the jurisdiction, but good friend of mine, the entire state uses SERPA holsters, even in 2025. And my friend's like, I see everybody's wearing a SERPA. What's going on with that? He's like, oh yeah, they tell you at the academy day one, you have a good chance of shooting yourself with this. It's like, why not spend a couple $1,000s? A couple thousand, a few thousand. Let's get a good quality Safariland holster. Instead, we're giving something that has significant safety concerns, especially for non-shooter types. And then you look at everything like from the qual course, like why are we still the 1970s called, they want this target back. Why are we telling the students day one, you're training to pass the qualification course? That's all we're going to do this entire week on the range. I mean, your doctorate is in what, education design, something like that?
Educational leadership and policy studies. Yeah.
There you go. What the hell?
Inertia. I can't tell you how many times I heard people say some variation of, well, it was good enough for me. It worked in my day. It works now. I mean, honestly, that's what keeps the 1911 alive for so long. You can almost hear the people screaming at their computers all over the country right now. Look, I love 1911s. I own, if I owned guns, I'd own several. They're a great gun, but they're not a cutting edge gun. 45 ACP, great round, not a cutting edge round. So people hold on to these things because they get emotional. They don't use logic and reason as much as we all kind of can try to tell ourselves we use logic and reason. As you well know, people make emotional decisions and then they go find logic and reason to back up that emotional decision and they hang on to it. And that's what, kept police training in the dark ages for so long. And it takes something like Newhall, right? To kick things over, and then it moves forward in fits and starts, and when it moves and then it gets someplace and we're okay, this is good enough, boom, we're locked in on this, we're getting better and better at doing this, but we're not innovating, right?
Yeah, Saturday I'm looking at Mike Wood wrote the book on Newhall. If you want to check it out, go to Amazon. I forget the name of the book, but it's the definitive study of Newhall. And Mike Wood,
I've got it back here on the shelf somewhere.
Yeah, do you know Mike?
No, I've never met him.
Yeah, he works for, he's a retired lieutenant colonel, I think reserve, and he's a captain of a commercial airline. But anyway, freaking phenomenal guy. Saturday night, I got a text from him, says, I'm reading here, Newhall 55 years ago tonight. And I responded like, wow, if we only had a time machine, it could be back there ready to turn the tide and win that fucking fight. Pardon my French, but, I get emotional about that stuff. Yeah. But, if you do, or they planted me and you, man, at that corner in Miami in April of 1986, and we were able to turn the tide and save Dove and Grogan, where would the law enforcement profession be today? Yeah. I mean, sadly, these lessons have to be written in blood or nobody gives a crap. That's my opinion.
And that's just an annoying part of human nature and these bureaucracies, right? Bureaucracies entrench quickly and they become very hidebound and they don't move, and people get comfortable within those bureaucracies. Witness what's going on in this country economically today, right? We've kicked the can down the road for a long time economically, and it's been comfortable, and we've lived large. And we're running out of money, print more. We're running up against budgetary caps and continuing resolution. And what ends up happening is it takes pain to get things moving again, and that's where we are right now. We're feeling pain. I don't even look at my 401k because I'm afraid I'll just end up weeping into my pillow. Because it's going to be painful, and if it doesn't hurt now, it's going to hurt worse later, right?
Yeah, there's an opportunity to buy the dip. I'll just leave it at that. If you want to look at it as a silver lining in that toilet bowl, but you're absolutely right. And I know Lisa told me, oh my God, we've lost so many $1,000s in the last 2 days. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Everybody's feeling the pain. They say $6 trillion and wiped out a couple of days on the stock market. I'm like, oh, whatever, man. They're unrealized gains unless you go and you're stupid enough to do a sell-off right now. And the economy, they're like, what do you think about the markets? Markets are all emotional, man. it's just absolutely emotional. They want to make it act like there's science to it, but in reality, it's everybody's needs to smoke a cigarette and take a walk around the building and calm the hell down.
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right, Dr. Fuller. Those that say, "Oh my God, the tariff's going to kill the economy," really? It was the same tariffs that they've levied against us has caused those economies to thrive. If we do reciprocal tariffs, we're going to fail. That logic does not work.
Yeah, and most people don't understand that most of these countries all these countries that we're slapping tariffs on, ours is a reaction, right? We're not starting the tariff battle. Okay, I mean, these countries have been slapping tariffs on us for decades. And we haven't done it back to them because, I don't know, because we're nice guys, because Holly Smoot back in the 30s drove everybody bananas. The fact of the matter is I fully expect that when our economy hurts, some of these other economies are going to crash, and their leadership is going to realize, hey, we need to get out from under this. We need to regain full access to American markets. And all the Americans are asking, I mean, it's not like we're saying, look, give us your ports, give us your coastal cities. We're not asking for territory and terrain. We're simply saying, drop your tariffs. Right. Take down your barriers to us, and we'll take down our barriers to you.
Yeah. Alan Kelly and Will Rhodes are on. Glad you guys found us this morning. I'm terribly sorry about the Facebook issue. I'll try to get it sorted out, but I may be zucked again. I'll see what Seeklander can do because I think he's an admin on there as well. But we'll sort it out later. And I'm not so, and I realize these are multivariable problems. It's not, and I don't want to fall into some sort of, if we do rise from this tariffs, it won't be because of some post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy of because of this, then that. It's a multivariable problem, and there is push and pull. And that's why he realizes, he puts the tariffs out there and 50 countries immediately are ringing our oh, let me talk. What do you want? What are you trying to get out of this? Because a lot of this is just negotiation, right?
Yeah, absolutely true. And, people seem to forget that we used to produce a lot in this country. We don't produce a lot in this country anymore. We're largely a consumer culture now. And the impact of that is a lot of this stuff that's being built that we buy is elsewhere. We are a huge, huge market for all kinds of countries. I mean, our country has a lot of disposable income, and our people spend it on, ask Jeff Bezos how much we're spending. So when all of a sudden these people find that our markets are much more expensive to access or flat closed because of the cost, that has a real world impact on their people who are producing widgets. And all of a sudden the Americans aren't buying widgets, or, because the prices have gone up, their widget industry crashes. So they don't want that to happen. So like, hey, how do we fix this? Oh, you don't want us to put tariff on your milk and then you'll drop the tariffs on our widgets? That seems okay to me. And look, love him or hate him, and I think people are very, very polarized around Mr. Trump. He is a businessman. He's been doing business for 60 years. Not always well, perhaps not always ethically, but he's been in this environment for a long, long time. And again, whether you like him or not, he survived. I used to say this about guys in Afghanistan. You see a 70-year-old man in Afghanistan, when I was there, the one thing you can assume about him is he is a survivor, right? Because he lived through the great times in Afghanistan. He lived through the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. He lived through the Taliban. He lived through Al-Qaeda. He lived through all of that, and he's still standing. The same can be said of Mr. Trump. He's taken his hits. He's taken his lumps. He's made good business moves. He's made bad business moves, but he is an experienced businessman. And he's putting that to work here. Is it the perfect environment, government versus private sector? No, it's not a perfect transition. And there are errors being made, of course, but is it going to work? Looks that way to me. We'll see.
A short-term pain for long-term gain. And I think that's kind of what Alan's saying here. Trump is trying to get the country out of trillions of dollars in debt and trillions of dollars of interest on that debt. We don't know pain if this debt continues. And I absolutely agree with you. And of course, you and I talking about global economics are grossly out of our depth here, but I mean, some of it's somewhat simple mathematics. I mean, and Let me take this a step further, because there's a guy that I follow, Rudyard Lynch. Are you familiar with that name?
Mm-mm. I know Rudyard Kipling fairly well, but not Mr. Lynch. No.
Yeah, Rudyard Lynch. He's a very young man, but he's got a really interesting YouTube channel called What If Alt Hist. I mean, one of the most well-read people I know of, and he's really good at reading a lot of books and then synthesizing that information and making some logical, intuitive leaps on this. Well, he had a bet with another YouTuber for $1,000, just a simple $1,000 bet, if that there would be 1,000 dead from internal conflict here in the United States by 1 April. Obviously, that did not come to pass, but his position is that it will. And here's the justifications for that position. It will be on that timeline, but something like that. And here's where I'm going with all this craziness. Number one, never underestimate the power of Trump derangement syndrome, which is, I think, is what Edmund is getting at here. Number one, I used to follow Sam Harris quite a bit, really consumed a lot of his content. I thought he was a somewhat moderate leftist, and you could kind of get a pulse check on where that part of society is going by listening to Sam. But the TDS took over to a degree in which he said, I don't care if, famously said, I don't care if Hunter Biden has a basement full of dead babies. It's nothing compared to Trump. And I'm like, you have stepped off the train, my dear friend. And he's got a PhD in neuroscience, and this guy's a brilliant man. But so
you can be brilliant and crazy.
Bingo. And a lot of people are. But where I'm going with all this, I'll try to get to the point rather quickly. Who would have guessed that the left would be burning Teslas and doing the things that they're doing? I didn't have that on my 2025 bingo card. Did you, Dr. Fuller?
No, I didn't. Although I did always find it odd that President Biden, it was so down on Teslas. You remember when he came out and was talking about all the electric vehicles that GM was making and that Ford was making, but never mentioned Musk. And I assumed it was because Musk is aligned with the right and not with the left. He wasn't.
I would have to imagine
the Democratic Party or something like that. So it kind of felt like he was even then kind of giving tacit permission to dislike that guy and not buy that car. But it's so funny to me because there are a lot of Teslas in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I can't speak for some of the other nationalities in my neighborhood that own them. But the folks that I know are Southerners, from this area, they're all very liberal people. All of them. I don't know a single, kind of, it's South Carolina, right? So the liberals seem to own Teslas and the conservatives seem to own pickup trucks. If you're going to make general statements. Yeah. And I don't know how that conflict is working with them now. They got TDS and they hate Musk because they've been told to hate Musk. But they still drive the Teslas. And I don't know how that just, and then you see the people burning their own cars and spray painting other people's cars and selling their Teslas off. And
it's like the women that went out and got fertilized, immediately after Trump. You didn't hear about this? Oh my God. TikTok is the one
saying they're swearing off white men because apparently we're all, the symbol of evil. But
yeah, like these women. I mean, TikTok is awash with the videos of women that went and immediately had their ovaries removed so that they won't get. Oh yeah, like I can't make. That's the only way I can make sure I won't give birth to a Nazi. I'm like, you can't make this up. I mean, this TDS is real, and if it's not in the DSM. Yeah, by the end of the year, it certainly needs to be.
That's insane. But I would postulate that the ones that are doing that probably weren't at high risk for raising children anytime soon anyhow. That's nuts. That is absolutely. But, I got to believe these people have always been there. It's just the advent of the computer age and things like TikTok and Facebook and YouTube has given them a platform. Right, it's given them a much more global reach than they ever would have had when you and I were kids. Right? Yeah, it's true of a lot of good things, but it's true of a lot of bad things. I mean, we definitely saw it with the people that victimized children. They were all of a sudden able to validate one another from across the country and across the world, whereas before they were just stuck in their mom's basement looking out the windows at the kids getting off the school buses. now they're being told by people all over the world, hey, you're okay, you're all right, you're one of us. There are other people like you out there. And they can advertise and they can reach out, and this can be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, you're right. And Alan says, wasn't Musk a left leaner at one point? Yeah, absolutely. With him and Rogan, and there's a whole pantheon of people, the Weinsteins, Eric and Brett. I don't know that they would consider themselves conservatives at this point, but they're certainly ringing the, Gad Sad, Dr. Sad. There's a lot of people that are ringing the bell for the lunacy.
Yeah, well, look at what's his name, Maher, right?
Bill Maher, yeah.
Wasn't that long ago that I always looked at him he was a funny guy that I could listen to that was kind of extreme left. Mm-hmm. I could it was still entertaining. And I don't think he's changed his positions very much. I mean, he perhaps has mellowed his rhetoric with age, but I feel as though his party has left him behind. He didn't leave his party behind.
I've seen these, and I don't know if you've seen them, Dr. Fuller, but there was some woman, she commented on X and she said, I was an anti-vaxxer, made my own, meals and this and that. And, that was part of the platform of the left. Now I'm a right-wing extremist. It's like, its pendulum is shifting and swinging. And I wonder, I would imagine my grandparents, who were probably Dixiecrats up into they wouldn't recognize the Democratic Party today. They would not recognize it.
No. I mean, I remember when Lloyd Benson ran for vice president, he was a left-wing hawk. A lot of people don't know that about Hillary Clinton. She's quite the hawk too.
Oh my God, absolutely.
She's absolutely a hawk. But she has other issues that I think outweigh that. My great grandmother, born in the 1890s, and I had the privilege of knowing her for my first 20 years or thereabouts, from Missouri, hated Ronald Reagan with a burning passion. And she was so far left, she was back around to the right. It was hysterical because she was all about carpet bombing people and not putting up with this or that or the other thing. But you just don't see that anymore. You don't see that. And the other thing you don't see is just sort of politics ending at the waterline, right? It used to be, we'll fight in the house, but when we get outside the country, we are one nation and we have one voice. And you just don't see our politicians doing that anymore, to the point where you see, when Nancy Pelosi went overseas and tried to strike her own separate deals with other countries in the Middle East around issues because she didn't agree with the things that Trump was doing. That just sends the wrong signal. I mean, oh my God, anybody who's had kids knows that mom and dad may argue behind closed doors, but you do not duke it out in front of your kid. And you certainly don't tell your kid one thing and then have mom tell them a different thing.
I spent my last 9 years as a staff officer, and most of the commanders operated in a similar fashion, where, whether it's the ideas coming from the staff or it's coming from the CO, he'd be like, he'd put his hand over the table like this. He's like, go ahead, guys, go around the room and I'm going to make my decision, slap the table, and we're going to speak with one voice. And everybody can say, sir, this is why I think this is a bad idea or a good idea. I think we should consider COA B instead of COA A, blah, 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 and finally like, all right, anybody else? All right, here's what we're going to do. Rich, you're going to do this. Dave, you're going to do this, blah, 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 blah. And it was after that, man, we walk out of that room in lockstep. That speaks to what you're saying.
And people, in an environment like that, it's not that, Chief Warrant Officer Brown thinks my decision will be the decision. You understand when you walk in that room that I'm on a staff, the guy in that chair is the decision maker.
Yep.
I just want to be heard, right? And frankly, I've earned that right. I've got 15 years on this job. I've been in this Corps for this long. I've been doing this particular job this long. I've earned the right to be heard in this environment and to have my opinions considered. And a commander that does that will get complete and utter support. The commander that doesn't, you'll be like, oh, then why am I running my suck? Why am I talking at all if you're just not going to listen? Right? I used to do the same thing with my first sergeants. I say, look, when the door closes, it's you and me. We're going to hash this out. And you agree with me. And sometimes I'm going to go with your decision. Sometimes I'm going to go with my course of action. But ultimately, when we open that door, we are as one. I will not put up with you submarining me, and I will not submarine you.
Yeah.
As long as we can have that, and you can speak freely and clearly and honestly with me. There's no repercussions here unless you start throwing hands. And hopefully we can avoid that. But that's all people really want. They want to be heard, and then they want the decision maker to make a decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes and it's delicate dance to say "I told you so, boss."
Yeah,
but like, oh my God, this happened. I'm like, yeah, I said that 2 weeks ago.
Makes you think.
It's actually in writing, and you got emails, and there's a thing in your desk. Okay,
I put your PowerPoint, sir.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you and I could go down the litany of times we saw that happen. But look who's on, Freddie Merck, and I'm sure Freddie, Mr. Freddie Merck, could give us chapter and verse of when those things happen to him.
It's the stories of his mustache that I'd really like to hear.
Oh,
that's the tales that thing could tell.
Yeah, he was saying, if you don't know who Freddie Merck is, I won't give it away in case he didn't want this told. But he said, yeah, when I was with the Marines and this and that, and I'm like, wait a minute, you were the Marines, but I don't know if you know this or not, Dr. Feller. If you're a Navy guy and you are attached to a Marine Corps unit, you have a choice to make. Do you want to go Marine regs or Navy regs? If you go Marine regs, you got to play by all the Marine Corps rules. If you go Navy regs, you still get to play by the Navy rules. It's a very interesting.
You know that.
Yeah. So like most of the corpsmen know it might be in your best interest to play by the Marine regs. But that also means that this beautiful mustache you get to enjoy as a sailor won't wash as a Marine.
Mm-mm.
So I looked at a command photo of old Freddie Merck, and I'm like, you sure about that? You are Marine? Well, no, I mean, I was on Navy regs to keep my mustache. I'm like, yeah, I don't blame you, brother. If I had a mustache like that, I'd be on Navy regs too.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I visited him, as you know, last summer, taught a class out there that you were in. And, I'd be talking to him in one room and his mustache would be in the other room making drinks. So,
He said the mustache is working out. Yeah.
It's downstairs benching.
But yeah, thinking of the 8 folks that somehow found us, I'm amazed that anyone found us this morning after we got zucked right out of the gate. What's going on with Iran, man? I mean, I see that we've moved all these B-2 bombers over to Diego Garcia. I see that the Gulf states are saying that we're not going to let you have overflight privileges. If you're going to attack Iran, you can't base anybody here that's going to attack Iran. What's going on? Why are we losing our friends on this one?
Well, I think part of it is, a perception of Trump. He's pushing things a little bit harder this time around than he did last time around. I don't think people want to trade a regional power for a world superpower. And I also think that, Iran has probably been doing their back channel communications. The reality is Iran is a regional power, right? They've wanted to be one for a long time, and they are. And they're not afraid to export violence. They do the lead or gold choice, right?
Las plumas, las platas.
Right. They'll throw you some gold or they'll throw some lead at you. And there are plenty of countries in that area that have learned the hard way that Iran will come into their country and foment revolution, support revolution, arm the revolutionaries, pay the revolutionaries, train the revolutionaries, and then lead the revolutionaries. Mm-hmm. So I think people are rightly nervous about them. And the thing about Iran, they're not going anywhere. They're not going to leave. The U.S. has a bad track record of showing up, fighting it out, and then just when things get weird at home or when the politics change, they just leave. Mm-hmm. And if I'm in charge of the government over there in the Middle East and I've got a choice to side with the U.S. on this issue or stay out of it, I know that Trump is gone in 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I've seen what the U.S. has done before, right?
Oh, yeah.
The way we left Afghanistan, mm-hmm. Right? We just throw our sucker in the dirt and leave the chaos behind us, flying off with people dropping off our airplanes that are trying to get out of the country. I mean, it's a bad look, and it sets a bad precedent. And if you're not one of our allies, from Europe, then they know that we're going to show up when it's politically convenient. And we have a bad, bad record of just leaving when it is politically inconvenient, particularly in the Middle East.
Absolutely. Edmund says, Iran is an accident waiting to happen. A willful accident waiting to happen.
I mean, and we're tariffing the Israelis too, right? I mean, isn't Netanyahu meeting with Trump this week about these tariffs? So Israel's been our ally in that region. That sometimes our only ally in that region, going back literally since the country was founded. And if we're going to monkey with them, well, what does that tell Qatar? Right? What is that? The only real counterweight to Iran in the area is Israel and the Saudis.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what that trade looks like between us and Israel. I mean, we're getting dates from them. I mean, what does that even look like?
I don't know what it would be. Maybe some electronics, some intellectual. I don't know. I think they're definitely benefiting more from their relationship with us than we are from them. Fast Group has finally found us.
Tony, I'm so sorry about that, man. Sorry to everybody that I got zucked again, folks. I like I told Dr. Fuller, I think Zuckerberg found my sock puppet. That's one of the first things you want to do for online surveillance. You create sock puppets and use them to exploit vulnerabilities. And I thought I was doing it well for the last year or so, but he may have found my
tracked you down. His AI got smart. Well, the thing is now, Rich, just market this episode as a limited edition, a special. You had to find us to watch this one. Only the true diehards, could really find this episode.
I was reading some book about guerrilla marketing back in the day, and I wish I could remember where it was. But one of the things like the band 9 Inch Nails would do is they would take a couple of thumb drives and kind of throw them around and leave them in certain places inside the concert venue. And if you found it, it had like some unreleased track on it or something like that, and some other, things. And people would share, "Oh my God, look what I found! It's not out yet." And you get that word of mouth marketing going. But yeah, that's what I was trying to do this morning.
That's right. You lower supply, you increase demand, right? That's what Adam Smith taught us.
Yeah.
So here's you lowering supply.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. We were talking about that with regard to Rolex. My brother was wanting to get. He wants to get the Explorer 2.
Nice choice.
Rolex and black dial. Yeah, I think I'm gonna wait this out. I'm like, bro, it ain't going down. Well, yeah, but because of the he's trying to make an economic explanation for why it might. I'm like, Hans Wildorf Foundation that owns Rolex and Tudor, they will maintain supply such that it will stay at that level, find that point, just like the De Beers controls the diamonds, right?
Right. Not all that uncommon a stone, but they figured out 150 years ago, control the supply and you'll drive up the price. I've wanted a Rolex Submariner since the 90s, and I still do not have one. And now they've gone up so much that they've priced themselves out of my desire range. I mean, not just out of my affordability range. They just priced themselves out of my desire range. It's too expensive for what you get.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if I'm going to chase one of those around now, I'll just look for a Petite Philippe or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm a unrepentant watch whore. I'm wearing a tog, right? One of my togs right now. So I understand your brother's desire for that watch, and it's a beautiful watch that he's talking about. But
yeah, this is a $1,000 Seiko, and it was the height of what they produced like 13 years ago. Before now, they got Grand Seiko out, which is just incredible watches. I mean, they're in the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I think you and I both are. We have a watch problem that I cannot financially support.
Yeah, right. I'm right there with you. But it is what it is, I guess. And matter of fact, talking to that, my older daughter, as you know, and some of the longtime viewers know, lives in DC. Lives very by Capitol Hill, frankly. And Rolex outperforms the price of gold. Yeah, well, there you go. Anyhow, she reaches out and says, "Hey, Dad, can you make me a bug out bag?" What? This is not kind of her bailiwick. This is not something I was. Yeah, sure. What's up? And she says, "Well, we live in downtown DC, and if we ever have to get out of here," she says, "I don't know what to have, and if I have to walk across town or I have to walk out of DC." I just would I would feel better having something that, if we could just grab it and get out. It's okay. I said, but now this is an adult. She's married now. They have good income, no kids. I'm like, well, we're talking about, probably $350 worth of stuff going into this bag, including the bag. And that doesn't count my time or my knowledge. I says, but I'm happy to do it. But you're going to have to help me with what we'll call a money laundering campaign. Because if I'm going to buy this watch that I've been looking at, I'm going to catch hell. But if I make a bag for you and you're so happy that I did this for you that you give me a gratuity of this watch, I sent her the link, and then, I'm probably off the hook. She's like, all right, old man, I'm in. So
nice
deal. So hopefully I'll be getting a new watch here in the next month or two.
Tony, you got a two-tone blue face sub from since 94, bro.
Good.
Is that the bluesy? Is that what you're talking about? If so, that's like one of my grail watches.
Yeah.
Freddie Merck says, my grandson inherits my Tag Heuer in about 25 years. He's 10 now. And this gentleman here, not sure how to pronounce your handle there, sir, but he says, I'm a diehard Casio Protect. Nothing wrong with Casios. Not at all. I mean, that's a working man's watch.
I wore a Casio in the first Gulf War, and then I got another one and wore it in Afghanistan, and still have it upstairs. Wear it all the time because you can just beat the holy crap out of them. They're just good.
And their price point has risen. The G-Shocks are probably over $100 now.
Yeah, but a G-Shock for $100 it's a deal. I mean, the one I have is a solar watch, and I just leave it on the windowsill, and it's always ready, always running. It's been running for 25 years without a hitch, and I've got no complaints about that. Now, G-Shock has realized, hey, look, if people buy one of our watches for $100, they'll probably buy one of our watches for $500 if we bump it up a little. So they've got some really high-end G-Shocks now out there that are really nice.
Very much so. Alan says, I guess I will stick to my Samsung smartwatch. It was a gift. Does free mean anything? It absolutely does, sir.
It does. I have an Apple Watch, and it drives me bonkers. I love the watch, but the battery lasts a day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one more thing I got to remember to charge at night. And, I'd constantly forget. And so eventually it kind of sits. I wear it when I work out, but I sacrifice a lot of utility because I don't wear it all the time. People talk, oh, it'll monitor your sleep habits and this and that. I'm like, no, it won't, because at 2 in the morning, the battery dies.
Correct.
So, but now I understand that a lot of the smartwatches that are coming out have 30 and 45-day batteries. So,
yeah, I was an early adopter of the Apple smartwatch, and I after a few months, I gave it away to somebody. It doesn't fit my lifestyle. I can appreciate there's a lot of stuff going on in there. But again, some of it was solutions in search of a problem, and it just created another layer of problem, whether it's recharging the thing all the time. And when I travel, carrying the little charging station and all the other crap that comes with it. And I could go down the litany of reasons. And there's something about these big, heavy watches, man, after wearing them for.
That's what a gentleman wears, right?
Yeah. Wearing them for so long, man, I don't know. Yeah. And Edmund says, Apple Watches are very hackable.
Oh, interesting.
Well,
my wife wears hers every day, but she's in, like today, she had a meeting she's the acting chief division counsel in Charlotte, and she's also acting for Columbia division for a few days because their guy's gone. So she's in meetings all day. I mean, today, I think she has 4 meetings, basically 1 an hour till lunch and then 1 at 4:00 in the afternoon, because that's a thing. But her Apple Watch saves her life because she's constantly getting texts and she can't be picking up her phone. A lot of times she's in places where she's, it's just a bad look to have a phone, but she can look at her watch and tap and do things. So I get it for her. But like you said, it just doesn't fit my lifestyle.
Well, I'm going to go back to Edmund's point here. And it is an attack vector.
It is.
If you're creating, a threat matrix because you're that kind of person, guy or gal that needs to worry about threats, whether they're, domestic or international, and I think your wife's position I would definitely be looking for a vector of attack, and an Apple Watch would be that potentially that vector. And I'll tell you another thing. When Dusty was here, we went and had lunch, and I'd mentioned earlier in the program, Dusty Solomon from Building Shooters was here, and we were updating the firmware on the Neuro. So Dusty and I had went out, and of course, he was a former naval officer, and then did probably a decade or more as a contractor for agencies in and around the multiple theaters. Great dude, love him to death. But anyway, he said, I tell you what, a near peer war, we've gotten by with so much crap. A near peer war, it's going to be like this: find something emitting a signal and kill it. That's what it looks like, And whether you're Apple, this thing ain't emitting a signal. Neither is yours. Guess what? This and Apple's smartwatch, any of that crap is at all times emitting a signal. So great, I just send a drone in, a little $150 drone, and with a quarter ounce of C4 and blow your head off, because you're emitting all kinds of signals. What do you think, Dr. Phillip?
Oh, it's certainly a possibility. I mean, I go with security through obscurity. I mean, there's just a bazillion of us out here with phones, for example. I'm more concerned about the Israeli strike pattern where they swap your phone out for a few grams of explosives. And of course, they don't have to kill you; they just have to wound you. But in a near peer war, I think that's the reality that we're going to face: is these drone swarm attacks, and they just blitz areas and just coat them and kill everything.
Well, in a battle space, like you got 20-mile box of contested space. I mean, it is as simple as, okay, in this kill box, that's the way they did the Gulf War. This is a kill box. Your fighter wing is assigned to that. Mm-hmm. Find and kill the below things in this box, whether it be Scuds, CSUs, whatever. It's yours. This is your playground.
Yeah. It's, in the infantry, we call it a kill zone, right? I mean, it's just, if it's in there, it dies. There's no ROE that you have to checklist your way through. They did the same thing in Vietnam. They were no-go areas where if anything moves or twitches in there, we've told all the locals, stay out of here, you get shot. Mm-hmm. So,
well, and then when a lot of folks watching may not know, well, we do send teams in there, reconnaissance teams and other teams doing signals warfare or whatever. We put a little RFA box around them on the map, restricted fire area. So you may not even know what's in that little RFA, but it's a 400 meter by 400 meter box. You can't drop any ordnance inside that box. And that's how we keep our assets alive in those contested spaces. However, what's in that RFA is blinking, drop all kinds of signals, So again, find that signal and smoke it.
Right. Well, and there's a difference between hitting them with a $150 drone with, half pound of C4 and a battery of 155 or a battery of MLRS. I mean, it's the difference between operating with a scalpel versus a sledgehammer. Mm-hmm. And the sledgehammer may well be called for. Sometimes you need the scalpel. And the scalpels are so much cheaper. I mean, I don't know what a 155 round costs these days, but I can imagine you can get a lot of kamikaze drones for the cost of one 155.
Yeah, the last time I looked it up, an 81 millimeter mortar round, HE-DP, was almost $700.
And how much for the fuse?
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, let's say you're all in $1,000, which still, it's reasonable to the casualties it can create. But my God, like you said, the scalpel of a $200 Chinese drone, a little Maverick Mini that we put a little. Yeah, I mean, but your point though, I want to circle back to what the Israelis were able to pull off was I think it was with Hezbollah and Hamas, or just Hezbollah.
I think it was just Hezbollah.
The pager attack, yeah. I mean, brilliant.
Yeah, and brilliant, but precedent setting. I think we're going to see that sort of thing. I just really do. And frankly, even if you can't blow them up, just you can find a way to hack phones and overheat them to the point where that destroys them, and maybe gives you a little nasty burn on your thigh or your butt or wherever it is you carry your phone. That's debilitating. For guys like you and I, and Alan Kelly, we'll survive without a phone. Yeah, it's annoying. Oh, well, I lost a bunch of stuff. Okay. We have redundancies for the information that are in there. I'll lose a lot of pictures. That'll really be a very sad day. Mm-hmm. But we're not going to be, incapacitated. Mm-hmm. People our kids' generation or younger. I mean, that's devastating. I mean, this is fetal position weeping on the floor kind of thing.
Like your daughter said, how are you going to go to Ireland without a phone? Right?
Exactly. And then they won't, after they recover from that initial shock, their ability to navigate the world without a phone, there's going to be a learning curve there. They'll get around it. But you do that and then attack at the same time, the physical attack at the same time. I can't call for help. I can't think about just electronics in your life and the ability, just a power outage, what that does to us. The cell phone towers go down. Holy crap.
Well, that was the thing on Face of the Nation yesterday morning. They had the Commerce Secretary on there, and the whoever the leftist journalist was that was trying to beat him up about. He kept trying to let her. We don't make anything. He's like, everything on your desk, in your pockets, in your purse has smart chips in it, and they're not made here. And until we get that trade balance back and we start making things here in the country again, we're vulnerable to attacks and all these other things. So it's not just economic, but I believe some of the avionics on the F-35 and F-22 are made in China. I mean, that is insanity.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and how is this that we haven't learned that lesson? Just during COVID, I would have thought we learned that lesson. Just how many things did we run out of because they were overseas and we couldn't get them here because nobody could go outside?
The pharmaceutical thing is that 80% of our pharmaceuticals is made somewhere else in India and China. I mean, that's insane. You're talking about a strategic problem that we got to solve, unless we're willing to okay, man, some percentage of the U.S. population, greater than probably in excess of 30%, will be dead in 90 days when those supply of pharmaceuticals run out.
Yeah, and we say, 30%, that's survival. No, it's not, because then you're going to get the worried well that are going to stay home to take care of these people. People are going to be afraid to go outside. The whole system of systems crashes very quickly.
Well, that's like you were mentioning about the asymmetric attack that the Israelis did on Hezbollah, with the pagers and I think they did walkie-talkies too, but the psychological damage of that, even if you're a survivor and maybe you lost a paw and you got a cool scar on your face, but still you're going to be jumpy every time you.
Right. And what does that do to your communication? I mean, the whole reason they moved to pagers in the first place, they moved their communication over to pagers, is because the cell phones were getting them killed. Mm-hmm. And the Israelis were just listening to everything they had to say. It says, okay, we'll go to pagers and we'll do it that way. Well, now you're a new recruit to Hezbollah. Let's say you didn't even get injured. You weren't even in the organization when it happened, but you know about it. Mm-hmm. And then they go, okay, welcome to the organization. Here's your pager. You'd be like, yeah, why don't you just put that on the desk? I'm not taking that.
That's right.
So now how do you communicate? You can't use pagers. You can't use cell phones. We got to use runners and notes, I mean, and that has an impact. That adds a slowdown of communication. And it adds another set of vulnerabilities that perhaps weren't in existence with the phones and the pager. But you've absolutely disrupted their communication chain, their ability to communicate, shoot, move, and communicate, right? Those are the three things we had to be able to do in the infantry. You got to be able to shoot, you got to be able to move, you got to be able to talk.
Here's an interesting way of, I'm always fascinated by these workarounds. And one of the ones I read was, let's say I give you, I create a Yahoo account, not traceable to me. And I give you the login and password for it. And then I just create a draft. Mm-hmm. And then you read the draft and you delete it. And it never goes through the channels where it can be read. So there's a lot of ways that they can get around this, but just causing them to that little moment of disruption where they're trying to figure out what's a safer alternative to communicate is what we need.
Yeah. It creates that distrust and that just resonates throughout. But that can be done to us too, right? I mean, the same thing that can be done to others can certainly be done to us. And we are much more reliant on our cell phones because we've never had a problem with our cell phones. Mm-hmm. Every now and then when there's a power outage, it becomes part of the social zeitgeist, right? We all know about the power failure in New York and all the phones went down. Those of us that are a little older remember 9/11, trying to make cell phone calls in New England. Forget it. Not only because there were so many people trying to do it, but because there were a bunch of towers on top of the World Trade Centers that were gone. And it's debilitating because of the way our society has evolved. So that's yet another one of those fights come and be ready kind of things. Have alternative solutions. I mean, I went out and bought a couple of walkie-talkies. I'm big on communication, right? I'm convinced that if things go to hell in a handbasket and you can communicate amongst your group, whatever that group is, whether it's your family or your South African neighborhood defense force, right? If I can talk and you can't and my opponent can't, I'm going to win. If no other reason than I can establish fallback positions, I can say, hey, meet me here. I can say, hey, group A, you stay where you are. Group B, you flank around to the right. Mm-hmm. And do a very simple flanking maneuver. That's devastating against an organization that can't communicate. So I bought some walkie-talkies, like Cabela's civilian band walkie-talkies, grabbed a box of batteries, threw it all in a Faraday bag, and threw it under my stairs.
Mm-hmm.
Never touch it, but if I ever need it, it's a de minimis purchase, but I think it makes a big difference in potential problem solving.
No, it absolutely does. Yeah, communications is one of those that I'm lacking. I'll be completely candid with you, and we've tried to get the ham radio stuff going, and part of it is it doesn't tickle the itch like going to the range does, or going to the gym does, or getting on the mats does. And it seems so nebulous to me that every time I try to learn it, like, wait a minute, these frequencies, and they go like this, and this band from here to there, and and this technology won't talk to that technology. And I'm just like, okay, let me shelve that for another day.
I'm right there with you. I struggle with the same thing. But the little civilian band walkie-talkies, they're a simple solution. They're a short-term solution. They're a short-range solution. But I mean, even if I'm walking with my family, for whatever reason, we have to walk somewhere, and I can give my wife a walkie-talkie, and we get separated for some reason, as long as we're within a couple miles of each other, we can still talk. We can still coordinate a link up. We can still find each other. And I find that to be a simple solution. I mean, my father-in-law lives about 55 miles away. He has the same HT radios as I do, but neither one of us is licensed. So if we have to talk in an emergency, we'll do it. But I think he's actually working on getting his license, which puts him out ahead of me. So good for him.
Do you remember? This came in later. I don't think it was around maybe when you were on active duty. GOTWA. Was that an acronym when you were in the Army?
No, not that I recall, at least.
Okay, it's a mnemonic for a 5-point contingency plan used to ensure safe returns and actions in case of unexpected event. So it stands for G, going. Where are you going? And the objective of the mission. O, others. Who's going with you and what are their roles? T, time. Time you expect to return, or the time to initiate a search if you don't return. W, what if. What to do if you don't return, including who to contact, what information to provide, and actions, what actions to take if you encounter a problem or if you're attacked or injured. So GOTWA, GOTWA, going, others, time, what if, and actions. And so these little simple mnemonics, the military is full of them. That's a pretty useful one that anybody can use.
We used a thing called a 5-point contingency plan. And it was the same idea. We didn't have that cool acronym, which frankly would have helped. But like in Ranger School, if you're going to go out and do a patrol, you leave the patrol base with a sub patrol, and you take 4 guys with you, and you tell, okay, whoever's staying here at the patrol base, this is the 5-point contingency plan. Where am I going? How long am I going to be gone? Who am I taking? What to do if I don't return? Actions to take if if I'm going to be back at 5 o'clock. If I'm not back at 5 o'clock, wait half an hour and then depart. Wait a half an hour and call an artillery strike. Wait half an hour and get on the radio and cry and scream. Whatever it is going to be. So I think that acronym is helpful.
Yeah, I don't remember when I was in the infantry, but it would have definitely been good because one of the most dangerous things you're talking about. You set up a patrol base and then you have to send out a security patrol. Coming back in those lines is always the most.
Yeah. Well, anytime you split your unit at all, right? Anytime you split your unit, linking back up when you've got a whole bunch of keyed up people with guns looking out for bad guys, walking towards each other.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever mentioned this, but that's how my uncle was killed in Vietnam. It was by another Marine. He was coming back in. The patrol was coming back in through the wire, and they got lit up, and he took a round to the neck, and bled out at 18 years old. So yeah, I mean it. And as a instructor, combat instructor at the School of Infantry, I was very keen to talk about that. Like, hey, the actions for coming back in, you got to know them forward and backward.
Your far recognition signals, your near recognition signals, all of that shenanigans has to be. And it was still nerve-wracking. Yeah. I see you. Do you see me? Yes, I see you. Okay. Don't shoot me in the face. Okay. Tell everybody with you not to shoot me in the face, because, mistakenly shooting me still kills me, right? Even if you feel bad and you're sorry, I'm still dead. So let's not have that happen.
I was watching the thing that Paul Howe did about he was a Delta guy at Mogadishu. And they were talking about, somebody asked him the question, did you guys ever do a full after action on the events of October, the Battle of Black Sea or Black Hawk Down, whatever you want to call it? He said, well, we tried to. We went in the hangar, and those of us that were walking wounded or still alive, we all, staff and COs and officers, sat around. And the first thing that happened was this Ranger officer who was manning one of the blocking positions. He says, well, the first thing you guys need to know is we had fire coming from the target building. And after y'all inserted, we had fire coming. No, you didn't. We were inside there shooting. Nobody else was shooting from the target building. And he goes, and it erupted into a screaming match, and it got nowhere, right? So he's like, yeah, you were shooting at us. But yeah, I mean, fracticide is probably much more accurate fire. Wouldn't you agree?
It sadly can be, yeah. Because the guys, let's face it, our guys are generally better trained than the other guys.
Yeah.
No, at least in terms of, if not target recognition, and certainly in terms of accuracy.
Well, that's another thing. Like I was reading something about Rhodesia, and they would find these terrorists, these black national communist terrorists, and they kept picking up their AK-47s, and they were all, the rear sight was like this. And because on the AK it says maximum, it's like, I want to shoot them with maximum power or whatever.
Maximum power. And
like, we kept wondering why the hell they're shooting over our heads or whatever. Like, well, there you go. They weren't going to hit us. But no, we wouldn't. A Western Army would not make the same mistake.
No, we saw a lot of it in Afghanistan. I saw a lot of these guys that wouldn't go prone. They didn't feel it was masculine to shoot while laying down. So they would stand up in a situation where you and I would go, oh, no, I'm not standing up, and fire from the hip, full auto.
Really?
And you can imagine how the accuracy was. The one handgun fight I've ever been in my life was in Afghanistan. I think I told you this story. And a guy was probably 100, 120 yards away, standing on top of a berm, going full auto on his AK from the hip, just punching holes in the sky. And it pissed me off. He's shooting at me. I'm out for a run. I'm out in Bagram, way out in the north edge of the base, out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, this asshole's trying to kill me. This is not a, political statement. He is trying to kill me. It made me mad. So I pull out my Glock and I start yammering away at him. And all the things I know about firing a handgun at a target at distance went right out the window. Didn't think of any of them. Just started mashing the trigger. I put 18 rounds downrange at that guy. And I think I told you this. I was reloading with my one reload, and it occurred to me, one of us is going to get hurt on accident. Right? We're out here playing with guns, and someone's going to get hurt on accident. At which point I said, you know what? I'm going to live to fight another day. Turned and ran back up the road. So had he done what he should have done, laid down, got a good sight alignment, a good sight picture, controlled that trigger, we would not be having this conversation today.
No, we wouldn't. No.
So thank God for ignorance.
Yeah, thank God for ignorance. Yeah. Anything troubling you as far as what do you see on the horizons for the United States? I think that might be a good way to kind of shut this down for the morning.
Yeah, I think our short-term economic impact is going to be painful. And I think that's going to trigger a lot of folks to do emotional things that aren't particularly wise. So I'd be concerned about that. The people at the lower end of our socioeconomic strata are going to be hit hard. I think the price of eggs, for example, I think is starting to drop. But these prices are hitting people, and there are going to be people that were on the edge that I think are going to, some of them are going to make bad choices, and that some of that, a small subset of that might end up being more prone to violence, more prone to doing things that folks like us would rather not see happen. I see the left, we talked months ago around the election, we talked about how they were kind of mellow, and you heard a lot of vocalizations from folks in sort of your social circles. I hadn't heard a whole lot on the, calling for violence, calling for this, calling for that. I think that's starting to congeal. I think they're starting to get, some direction and some motivation. So I think they're starting to, attack Teslas and Musk has become sort of a lightning rod for them. I think that will expand. I think New York State's making some really bad decisions around their penal system. So that's going to be a difficult. Yeah,
Tell me more about that.
Well, they've got problems with their prison guards. So they've been really pushing this idea of, no prisons, no incarceration, communities, not corrections. And there's a couple of special interest groups out there that have been pushing it real hard. And it's impacted the budgets. So you're starting to see budget cuts in the correction facilities. You're starting to see a rising level of acceptable behavior before you get incarcerated. And between that and the budget cuts, it's starting to squeeze the correction facility employees. And some of the guards are just like, screw this. It's getting more dangerous in here. There's a move recently where they're taking solitary confinement, or they took solitary confinement out of the jails up there, out of the prisons. The state passed a law that said you can't do it anymore. So how do you segregate the most violent people in an already violence-prone environment? Well, you can't. So assaults on guards are going up. The inmates are getting the idea that, well, they can't, what are they going to do to me? Take away my dessert? You've worked in that environment, so you understand the value of being able to segregate people more than I do. But now you're starting to see the corrections guards go, screw this, I'll go paint houses or dig ditches or something. They're quitting, which of course increases the demands on those that are left. And so you're getting fewer and fewer guards. You're getting more and more attacks on guards, fewer penalties for those who do attack guards. And now I think the state is at a point where they're like, we're overcrowded for the people in the facilities we have, and they're starting to let people loose that shouldn't be let loose. And I think you're going to see a wave of violence in and around New York and surrounding states. And then I also worry that other blue states are going to follow blindly behind New York and do the same thing. So that may take a year or two or three, but I'd be concerned about that if I lived in an area like that. It's less of a concern down here in the South because they take their corrections very seriously down here. But I'd be watching that if I was up in some of these more blue states.
No, I'm completely ignorant to all that. And I've worked in I ran the SHU, or what some prisons would call the SHU. We called it the Disciplinary Segregation Pod. And it's lockdown 23 and 1, right? And then the 1 hour they do get to come out, they're alone and they're handcuffed and shackled. It's not supposed to be a good time. And then and then the way it worked in there, just to give a little bit more on that, just for those that didn't live that life, if you don't play by the rules, and the handbook is relatively, really, really thin. We don't want to, these people can't follow the rules on the outside. So if I give them, this laundry list of shit to do, it's never going to happen. So they purposely make it a very slim thing. But if you follow this, your time in the SHU will be 30 days and you're back in general population. However, if you don't, I would write their ass up. And then if they get written up, they would have to go before a board. And the 3-panel board would be like, you just watch yourself another 30 days, another 45 days, whatever. And, and sometimes like, hey, look, man, you're just going to die in here, or you're going to play by the rules and you can go back to Gen Pop and get your hustle back on whatever it is you're doing, but it's not going to happen. So most of them will learn very quickly. Oh, okay. This is awful, miserable. I hate this. Let me play by the rules. But to take that tool away from the corrections institution is absolutely insane.
Yeah, and what do you do to punish a guy that's already doing 3 consecutive life terms plus 150 years?
Yeah, that's the one.
How do you control that guy? Yeah. Right? He's already shown himself to be a nasty human being, or he wouldn't be where he is. And now he's surrounded by other nasty human beings, and he's still uncontrollable. What do you do? And now I can't get him away from anybody else. So not only is he a hazard to my guards, he's a hazard to the other inmates.
Yeah. And these people, I'm telling you, man, they may look like us. And we've said it on here 1,000 times. The corrections taught me that they may look like us. They may part their hair the same way as us. They may shave their face like us.
They may shop from the Rich Brown Spring collection like us.
That is correct. But I promise you, brother, they will never think like me and you. And the minute they can get a hustle on and to screw you over or to victimize you, me, whomever, it's a simple calculus. They're going to do it.
And if you're going to start, reducing the people that are in facilities, and you're going to put people out on the street, that means you're just going to raise the bar of acceptable criminality.
Right.
Right. Well, you can do this and go to prison. Well, now you can do this plus 10 and go to prison. And now you can do this plus 20 and go to prison. There's at least one organization up there in New York whose stated goal is to make New York the first state with no correctional facilities at all. The name of the organization escapes me right now, but it's, some very huggy feely, petunias for people kind of, organizational name. But that's in their charter, is we want New York to be the first state without any correction facilities. Like, that is a lovely, lovely thought, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that our society, that humanity would evolve to that point. But you're fooling yourself if you think that's the case.
Yeah, and it's just absolute ignorance. Go work in there. I read one thing recently. It was a meme. It's like, my friend was he was a left-leaning guy. He's got a degree in sociology. He wanted to be a police officer. And after 3 months of working this urban hellscape, he's like, these people aren't even human, was his. And I'm like, well, welcome to the party, man. They don't think like me and you. And it's not a color thing.
It's just a life experience thing.
A matter of fact, I thought the most terrifying people that I was charged with, having custody over, were the Aryan Brotherhood. Those dudes, man, they were
some spooky dudes.
Spooky. I would say that the Hispanic gang members and the African American gang members, they tended to be, I don't know, I tended to get along better with them for whatever reason. The Aryan Brotherhood, man, they weren't, and somebody would snitch on something, I could hear something. The Aryan Brotherhood had it locked down, and I don't know if they had a greater fear of reprisal. I don't know what it was, but I could never develop a snitch inside that organization. They were locked down, very disciplined. Yeah. And scary.
That comes from violence and a level of violence that others, aren't necessarily willing to engage in. Because, I ran into cases where the Aryan Brotherhood would go after family members.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't recall the Hispanic gangs or the black gangs doing that. Now, maybe they do, and I never heard it, never ran into it. There are other people in here with law enforcement experience. Perhaps they've run into it. But that changes things significantly. You want to come after me, that's one thing. You want to come after my 2-month-old baby, that's a whole nother level of problem. And the AB would do that sort of thing. So
yeah. Alan Kelly says Escape from New York may become a reality. Great John Carpenter movie. Yes.
Yeah, having lived in New York, I have escaped, and I'm quite happy about that. Quite happy.
Well, and you were raised in California, so you can understand that mindset. I can't. I mean, I've obviously been to California a lot, spent months out there undergoing certain training, but I don't have that California mindset. I'll never understand the way they think.
Yeah, and urban centers in California back when I was there were different animals. And San Francisco was San Francisco. It was always just sort of, you didn't go down to the Haight-Ashbury and hang out. You didn't go to Polk and Castro unless you liked fellas. But now when I lived in East Side San Jose, that was a whole different animal, because that's where I really got introduced to the idea of racial cliques and gang and racial groups. And it was not a haven for a lot of folks, who looked like you and I. And that because I was there for an outlier and didn't have that racial group to bond with, I was victimized quite often. Mm-hmm. Because, I don't want to make it sound like this is, me falling into the hands of the Taliban. But it was unpleasant. And I'm very happy to get out of there. But you see that in urban centers all around the country. And having lived in a few of them, I'm very happy to be where I am now. And if I could move to the plateau, I'd move to the plateau.
Maybe someday.
Northern Alaska, if I could.
Yeah, I love Alaska. That might be the final frontier, final refuge. Dr. Fuller, anything we did not discuss this morning? And again, I apologize for the Facebook thing, guys, and I'll work on it. I don't know if I can promise it I'll get it solved, but we'll figure something out.
If anyone can, it's you, Rich. But I think there's always things to talk about, and it's always enjoyable just chit-chatting with you and interacting with the audience. So I'm always happy to be here, and I do enjoy chatting with you, a fellow Luddite that struggles with the computer world that we live in.
Well, Dr. Fuller, if you would, sir, please take us out.
Folks, the fight is coming. If you haven't noticed that, you're just not paying attention. And I think one of the defining factors of the AWS audience is they do pay attention. So you know the fight is coming. Be ready.